Innerscope measures the peripheral nervous system, the body's expression of emotions, because that's really where we experience emotions. We don't say, wow, my amygdala just fired, or ooh, my prefrontal cortex just went off. We talk about our skin sweating, our heart racing, our breath being taken away, or something moving us. And those are the 4 channels we measure: skin sweat, heart rate, respiration, and motion. A simple neurobiological fact: there are no direct connections between the language centers of the brain and the emotion centers of the brain, means you can't actually ask people about their emotions. So we need unconscious measures to measure unconscious processes. And we do that wearing a vest that is applied to the body very naturally and non-invasively in a wireless device. And then we have a 5th channel, which is eye tracking, where we can tell visually where someone is paying attention. And it's important to understand how we define engagement. From an Innerscope perspective, engagement is attention to something that emotionally impacts you. So low attention processing is another way of describing what scientists call implicit processing or unconscious processing. So if you think about, again, the evolution of neuroscience, it's been away from consciousness is the only thing that matters to, wait a second, there's some unconscious things happening here. Our conscious awareness is only a small part of what the brain is doing at any given time, between 5 and 25%. That means 75 to 95% of brain processing is below conscious awareness. I think the most popular application is to copy testing, understanding an advertisement either at its finished stage to learn best practices going forward, or at the early stage to try to get a direction on how things are going to evolve over time. Communications have to work on more than one level. They can't just be rational, they can't just be informational, they can't just be cognitive. And I think the agencies and creative people have intuitively been there a long time. They've known that we've got to get an emotional component. And what's shifting now is that the advertisers who are really trying to get their products out there are recognizing that we have to communicate on multiple levels. There's nothing linear about the brain. The brain is a parallel processor and it's doing many things at many times. So the notion that we first have attention to something and then that generates interest and then ultimately desire and action, I think is implicitly wrong. Number 2, I think the model assumes too much conscious processing, right? I have to be attention to something and then I have to have conscious interest. And then even the word desire, which is actually a conscious attribute to an internal feeling state, implies a lot of consciousness. In addition to understanding what's happening in the brain and happening in the body, we have to understand how the 2 are connected. So as information is processed, it really goes through 2 channels. One is a conscious channel, which is going up to the cortex. The other is an unconscious channel, which is going down through the body. And that unfiltered portion is what we're measuring. It's unbiased by our conscious processing. Clearly, we know from a neuroscience perspective that bottom-up or unconscious processing are more influential. That said, there are clearly times when conscious processing, or what's sometimes referred to as top-down processing, is more influential. Let me give you an example. I'm going to the store to buy beer, and I have a shopping list. And on that shopping list, it says, buy Sam Adams. I go into that store, I look for Sam Adams, I'm paying attention to the rack, I purchase Sam Adams. That's a very top-down process. A bottom-up process might be, I'm going to the store to purchase beer. And on my shopping list, it just says beer. I walk in, and all of a sudden, a bottom-up process occurs that takes into account how I'm feeling in that moment, the kind of image I want to present of myself, what kind of taste experience do I want to have. I think the next big thing is actually going to be small. And that means smaller sensors and faster processing so we can get real data about unconscious processing to our clients as soon as possible. We're working on real-time metrics. So for television clients, they can come in and they can see their focus group and then watch their biometrics as they experience their media and then take that information into the focus group and inform it so they can probe deeper. We noticed audiences like you really responded to this or really didn't respond to that element or creative moment. And then they can probe on that. And that's a great opportunity to do both top-down processing and bottom-up processing with our audiences. I think the other big area that's exploding right now is point of purchase. So measuring actual shoppers in actual stores or actual shoppers in virtual experiences, how they experience things at the point of purchase, signage, shelf sets, packaging is really an exciting area because we now understand a lot of buys are impulse buys and they're made at that point of purchase. I think what we're seeing is a lot of advertisers and market research companies at every level are trying to figure out what all this neuroscience is and how do we apply it. And what Innerscope is trying to do is get out there and say, look, we're not a whole solution. We like to work with others. We need to work with other forms of information in a collaborative way and an integrative way. I think some of the most exciting work that we do is when we're taking information from multiple channels, the conscious and the unconscious, the biometrics and the eye tracking, the self-report, the qualitative, and it all comes together to create a three-dimensional view of how people are processing information on multiple levels.